Thank you very much, Sarah and Nick. Diolch yn fawr iawn. And I'm very pleased to be joining you here at this conference today. I think it's the first time that Community Housing Cymru has organised this kind of partnership conference with the Energy Saving Trust. And I think it's an important move forward as we try together to look at issues about how we tackle energy efficiency and fuel poverty. If you just look back 2 years, we had a home energy efficiency scheme in the Assembly government. It was under some pressure, but not much. If you talk to people about whether or not they were boiling their kettles full or quarter full for individual cups of tea, they would have looked at you and wondered why you were asking the question. And yet suddenly, in the last year, the position has completely and absolutely and utterly changed, hasn't it? It's changed for us as individuals, and yet probably everybody in this room can afford to pay where they are now. But it has changed beyond absolute recognition for those who cannot afford to pay. And that's why it's a critically important area for anybody who's responsible, whether it's in government or in organisations like yourselves, in terms of looking at how we keep living in the homes in Wales affordable for those people who live in them. Now, we have a number of significant Assembly government policy initiatives, and Sue Essex's report on the affordable housing and the additional funding that we've committed from the Assembly government and from the UK government in the low carbon building programme in Wales are part of that. And Nick talked about the Essex report, which I think is going to have a fundamental impact on the way we support social housing in Wales, with a growing importance of housing associations as providers of affordable housing. And the Essex report did a couple of things I think particular of relevance to us today. Not surprisingly, it welcomed the Assembly Government's commitment to providing an additional 6,500 affordable homes in Wales by 2011. But I particularly wanted to pick up what the report is saying about design and environmental standards, and I'm going to quote directly. The Welsh Assembly Government should be congratulated for its determination to raise environmental standards in housing as an intrinsic part of its action plan on climate change. In terms of affordable housing, well-designed, carbon-free, low-energy housing can significantly help in reducing fuel poverty. There is a real need to develop showcase initiatives across the social housing sector to stimulate development options, building on existing good practice examples in Wales and elsewhere. And in aiming to achieve those higher design and environmental standards, the report recommends that for social housing, funding needs to be available and prioritised from the Assembly Government for achieving this, both through traditional housing grant, but also, as Nick says, through use of economic development grants. Design and quality standard guidance needs to be streamlined and proportionate. The Welsh Housing Quality Standard needs to be reassessed urgently to consider its contribution to meeting the challenge of climate change, and energy efficiency should be given priority and standards should be set for new or improved affordable housing in the public and private sectors. Now, I can see some of you nodding at that recommendation, and I can assure you that this recommendation, as well as the 42 others made in the report, will be given the most serious consideration by both myself and the Deputy Minister for Housing, Jocelyn Davies, over the coming weeks. This report, as well as other recent announcements made on energy efficiency initiatives in Wales, will keep up the momentum required to deal with one of the most challenging issues facing us at the moment. At the Sustainable Development Committee meeting in the Assembly, which was held on the 4th of June, I was able to announce the excellent news that the UK-wide low-carbon building programme was prepared to invest £1 million in Wales. And I will be at least matching this funding. We're trying to see whether we can put more in. The programme will be specifically used to pilot microgeneration installations in fuel-poor households, and I hope it can form the core of a wider programme aimed to maximise access to the supplier's contribution, the CERTs, the Carbon Emission Reduction Target funding, and other resources. Now, a number of other initiatives have also been announced following the Fuel Poverty Summit convened by Ofgem earlier this year, which I attended. And these include a pilot scheme to deliver energy tariff advice through the Home Energy Efficiency Scheme, and a £150,000 fund to roll out Citizens Advice Bureau awareness campaign on social assistance for the vulnerable. Now, as part of our development in Wales of a National Energy Efficiency and Savings Plan, which will be going out to consultation, I think the target is at the end of November, I will be reviewing our Welsh fuel poverty commitment and also reviewing current action on energy efficiency to address our twin priorities of reducing emissions and reducing fuel poverty. Now, the scope of this plan, it will be the first time that Wales had its own National Energy Efficiency and Savings Plan, will particularly focus on energy efficiency measures as means to deliver greenhouse gas emission reductions and reduce fuel poverty, as well as having a legislative review of the Home Energy Efficiency Scheme with the remit of maximising funding available for fuel-poor households. And the plan will also provide us with the opportunity to work with partners such as yourselves in working towards a low-carbon Wales. And of course, we have our manifesto commitment of reductions of 3% per year of greenhouse gas emissions from 2011 that our Welsh Climate Change Commission is working on at the moment. In addition, I am engaging with the big energy suppliers in Wales and have begun a series of meetings with the individual companies to drive home the message that the Welsh Assembly Government is committed to pushing for more transparent energy tariffs, cheaper energy for fuel-poor households, the increased take-up of switching of suppliers, as well as the increased use of smart meters as a way of reducing energy consumption. This dialogue with the energy suppliers is ongoing, and I hope that the energy industry in Wales will contribute positively in the development of our National Energy Efficiency and Savings Plan, because we really need the suppliers' contributions and government's contributions being maximised together in terms of taking this agenda forward. I'm also recruiting an independent chair of the Fuel Poverty Advisory Group, so we can really give that some teeth in terms of challenging government here. And we'll be attending another ministerial summit along with all the other UK ministers responsible for fuel poverty in 2 weeks' time to look at how we're driving that agenda forward. Now I want to turn to the issue of energy efficiency in new homes. As many of you will be aware, in December I announced the adoption of the Code for Sustainable Homes in place of the BREEAM Eco Homes rating for new homes in Wales, and we refined the Assembly Government requirement for zero carbon by stating that consideration was being given to setting the target at level 5 of the code from 2011, with a desire to move to level 6 as soon as possible when the difficulties in the methodology have been resolved. Since the 1st of May this year, it has been a requirement that new homes built by housing associations in Wales must achieve level 3 of the code and must look to higher levels 4 and 5 as soon as possible. And I know there are already very good examples of sustainable buildings being constructed by housing associations across Wales. Level 3 of the code, as I probably don't need to tell you as an informed audience, will improve the energy efficiency of new dwellings by setting minimum energy and carbon emission reduction requirements that are a 25% improvement over current building regulations. Level 4 is a 44% improvement and level 5 is a 100% improvement. The Assembly Government is also earmarking exemplar projects to help us plan effectively for zero carbon, and these are being driven by the Department for Economy and Transport. An initial 28 sites have been identified to undergo energy assessments to underpin low and zero carbon developments, many of which are mixed use. The aim is to have a focused strategy in order to learn lessons and gain experience which can then be applied to subsequent projects. An example is the works in Ebbw Vale, a pioneering development to achieve 60% reduction in regulated emissions relative to the 2006 building regulation standards using community energy systems.